If someone were to ask what the main key aspects that are indicative of tokusatsu like Sentai, Rider, and Ultra are, you could say quite a few things and you'd be right. Some might say it's the brightly colored suit designs, some might say it's the larger-than-life robot battles, and some might even say it's the quite literally explosive action scenes. But for my money, it's gotta be the core representation and vessel of our hero's powers, the Changer. A staple part of what gives these franchises their own respective flair are not just the awesome heroes and their heroic deeds, but the mechanisms by which they call upon these powers and draw that connection between character and hero. Like many things, this concept in particular has been interpreted in many different ways across each of these franchises' long-running lifespan. For a franchise like Kamen Rider, we've seen just how innovative belts and drivers can get, but at the end of the day, you can always count on them to be belts. For Ultra, while I admittedly am still not as well versed in this franchise, I've noticed these transformation devices to be a lot more unique and alien, much like the Ultraman characters themselves. But the franchise whose changers have created a rich and diverse tapestry of transformation has to be Super Sentai. I think setting up Rider and Ultra as reference points helps to illustrate the bounds by which Sentai usually operates when developing a changer for its respective season. Like I said, Rider is almost always going to be a belt, and there's no shying away from that anytime soon. The changers of Ultra are super out there, and quite honestly I'm not sure how I'd begin to categorize them. Sentai firmly plants itself in the middle, requiring a balance of two things: creativity that properly invokes its theme, as well as a dash of realism that showcases its utility. In this video, I'd like to talk a bit about what makes a Sentai changer truly exciting, and also go over some of my favorites across this iconic franchise. So let's get our changers ready, and let's go! Sentai changers have taken on many forms, and at this point you can more or less categorize them into one of these buckets. This first bucket is actually the most iconic category, the wearable device. Wearable changers, and kind of specifically wrist changers, were the go-to type of changer from the early days, and they actually enjoyed an 18-year back-to-back span of being the dominant changer type for the main teams. This type of changer refers to those that are worn on your person and are often a bit more discreet. And that's the distinction I find fascinating between Rider and Sentai. There is a common trope in superhero stories about secret identities, and usually if your key item is well worn and hidden, that makes things much easier to don your hero form and rush in to save the day. While this trope may not predominantly exist in either of these franchises, I think it influences a lot of how wearable henshin devices come to be. With something like a wrist changer, the transformation device is worn on, well, the wrist, but may either be easily concealed or played off as a watch or some sort of communication device, which they also often end up as. This makes it super easy to access and a bit more realistic as well. You could walk around with something like the Digitizer for Mega Ranger and no one would bat an eye. But if you were to walk around showing off literally any Kamen Rider belt, you would definitely attract just a bit of attention. And that's not to say that's a bad part of the Kamen Rider visual concept. It's important for the belt to be cool, stylish, and distinct. But for the wrist changer and other wearable devices, it allows an opportunity for more seamless integration into whatever our heroes wear before they don their spandex. It's really no secret as to why a strong proportion of all changers are worn this way. It's a time-honored concept that is firmly planted in both Sentai and other tokusatsu series as well. While wrist changers dominated the changer scene for quite some time, we would see another type of device enter the scene that would also become a bit of a staple on its own: the mobile phone. While the first phone would be introduced through Mega Silver's K-Tizer, the first primary device taking the phone form would be Gaoranger's G-Phone. I think this ties pretty heavily into the technological revolution that was happening around the world. Mega Ranger's concept in itself was born out of this very notion, and while the mobile phone was a notable technological marvel, they would soon after become more accessible, affordable, and commonplace. So, after dipping their toes into phone changers a bit, we would see them come up with a lot more, especially after MagiRanger. And you know, this makes a lot of sense. Phones are something that everyone has on them all the time, and its utility and functionality is more than obvious. So it would make complete sense to use this already critical device to channel Ranger power through to its user. While the phone's use as a communicator is already apparent, this is where the need for innovation kicks in, because it can't just be a phone. It has to have some sort of alternative functionality that distinguishes itself from season to season. Heck, the Ninja Starburger integrates the Shuriken into its visual concept, although I guess to label that as functionality is debatable. Either way, while the phone changer is an already inventive and sophisticated concept, it always features a faithful integration of the season's theme and gimmick, making their phones much more than meets the eye. At this point, we've more or less milked the wrist changer concept quite a lot. We've also worked out a lot from the phone theme as well, and its wow factor may be diminishing just a bit. So what is the next logical step in the evolution of changer style? Well, it's gotta be the style we've seen a lot during the recent years of Sentai, weapon changers. These changers act as both the Ranger's transformation device as well as their primary sidearm. I'll be honest, between the wearable and mobile phone and weapon styles of changers, I tend to like the weapons a bit less. One reason is that it usually tends to contradict the appeal of the wearable changers, which is its integration and subtlety. However, I do see the benefits of this. When a changer is integrated into the weapon, it's usually for a strong thematic correlation. Very recently with King Ohger, we saw the kings don their ranger powers through the OhgerCalibur, which in essence was the embodiment of their monarch status. This, along with most other weapon changers, suffer from the problem that most roleplay items do in that they can't really translate 1-1 in their DX toy forms. So unless I take out a new mortgage and buy the full-size premium Bandai version, the on-screen to off-screen connection is diminished just a little bit due to that difference. Minor nitpick aside, it's a really creative alternative, I won't deny that at all, especially when there's some sort of clever gimmick integration. And I figured that the changer serving a dual purpose adds way more function to the Rangers when in use, not to mention to their playability when bought as toys. Having the source of their power also be their main weapon of choice feels pretty symbolic and deepens the connection the Rangers have to their changers, as well as the importance of the changer overall. These are our main buckets, but there is indeed a fourth one, affectionately labeled as Other. These changers just don't really belong to a dominant category, with the very first one being Jakka's powered capsules. Other others we would see would be like Shurikenger's baseball style Shuriken Ball, the Deca Rangers team's SP license, Go On Wing's Wing Trigger, Ghostager's Tensoder, and Juo the world's flashlight, Juo the Light. While these items are difficult to categorize, they more or less serve to be thematically relevant to the Rangers they belong to. Here's our distribution of changers across these four categories. Some changers may be fusions of types, like Morphin Blaster as a phone/gun, but it's called a blaster, so it's being placed in the weapon section. You might also argue that the Juo changer belongs in the other section, but aside from it being like a Rubik's Cube, it's intended as a phone, so it goes there. Another one I had to look up was the Doron changer, which I learned is modeled after the Inro, which is a small container that is typically worn along with traditional Japanese garb, therefore it gets placed in wearable. So we've talked about the types of changers and how they each effectively play into each season's visual aesthetic and design dynamic. What are some highlights among all these changers? I'd like to share with you my completely biased list of favorites among all the changers in Sentai. Let's start with the VS changer from Lupin Ranger vs Pat Ranger. I thought the VS changer was clever not just for integrating the VS vehicle and trigger machine gimmick, but also allowing for each team to utilize it slightly differently to be distinctive of their team. The Lupin Rangers having the locks on their machines, while the Pat Rangers having triggers on theirs really spices things up and plays into their respective motifs very well. It's not the cleanest or subtlest changer out there, but I think it does an appropriate job in serving as the same changer for two opposing teams. The OhgerCalibur from King Ohger. Yes, as biased as I am against this category, I can't deny that this buggy blade has crept its way into my heart. In an era filled with interchangeable gimmicks, I was very curious as to how they were going to execute the changer for this season in particular. I think it was very smart of them to have each Ranger's gimmick firmly placed on the actual changer, and while it does result in a sense of permanence in terms of their placement, it alludes back to the origins of the King Ohgers themselves. Thematically speaking, it's very powerful, but what's even more powerful are the sound effects. The OhgerCalibur jingle is one that I thoroughly enjoy, and I can't recall the last time I was so impressed by a Sentai changer's jingle. The OhgerCalibur is a very fitting representation of the King Ohger's strength, power, and royalty. The ShodoPhone from Shinkenger. Okay, show of hands, when the ShodoPhone was first introduced, was anyone else mystified by how on earth this phone even turned into a brush? That was actually pretty insane to me. The ShodoPhone does such a great job of connecting the kanji and calligraphy motif into its changer, and is engineered so well. The transformation is quick, simple, and so effective. The ShodoPhone is a brushstroke of genius, evolving on the phone concept to a wildly new degree. The Dino Brace from Abba Ranger. I think the Dino Brace literally checks off most if not all boxes as to what a wrist changer should be. The Dino Brace is interchangeable with each Ranger's plates to represent their respective dino. This really prominently displays the team's concept through their changer, and is even cooler that it can be customized this way. I think this changer is very sleek and simple, but also effectively encompasses the ferocity of the team's dino powers. It's a solid baseline changer that I think is very cool and very classic. The Accucellular from Bokenger. This changer holds a very special place in my heart as it was my gateway into Sentai, and also because I had a phone kind of like this in middle school. This changer was very fitting of the adventurer's concept. Not only did it have that cool black light function, but its core spinning mechanic never failed to provide that high speed adrenaline rush. The numbers representing each vehicle was a nice touch too, being able to press the appropriate numbers to trigger specific combinations. It's sleek and compact, but has a sense of high technology at the same time. the Accucellular truly invokes that adventurous spirit and sets itself right into overdrive. The MagiPhone from MagiRanger. I feel like with MagiRanger's concept, their changer as a phone is a no-brainer. Wands are an extension of a witch or wizard's magical powers, so naturally they keep them on their person at all times. It makes perfect sense as to why they would take another item that is constantly by a person's side and integrate this concept into it. Not only does this work well at a conceptual level, but the design and execution of it is stellar. With the middle of the phone flipping out to extend itself into a wand shape, it's surprising just how well this works out. I also think the numbers representing a magic word and certain combinations resulting in different spells is genius as well. It really by all means is a truly magical changer. And the Sentai changer that has always captivated my heart is the Geki Changers from Gekiranger. I can't recall if I've already talked about these changers before, but I can't begin to say how much I loved these changers when I first learned about them. A lot of things about Gekiranger were pretty revolutionary. These suits, for one, didn't have any belts at all, so the entire visual image was thrown for a loop. With no belts or forearm guards or boots or anything like the typical Ranger style convention, I was so curious to see how they would implement a changing mechanism into this already simple design. Lo and behold, the Geki Changers came in the form of these forearm wrist gauntlets, acting as their transformation devices as well as their, air quote, primary sidearm. The theme of Gekiranger was not just the animals, but the martial arts styles that are derived from these animals' specific traits and characteristics, much like how some martial arts are influenced in the real world. By stylizing these changers around their fists, the Geki Changers effectively place an emphasis on the most important weapon a martial artist has. And not only that, but it also blends in the wildcat motif as well, with the Geki Rangers often utilizing them in scratch-like motions, hence their organization name, Scratch. These changers distinguish themselves from the Ranger suits with their bright and bold orange accents, however they blend in so well with the overall image. Its simplicity is matched perfectly, and it's such an innovative combination of weapon and changer and style and motif. It's a peak changer that does a lot right in a fun and ferocious way. Changers come in all shapes and sizes. As future iterations of Sentai bring about new origins and new methods of invoking their powers, we'll continue to see some inventive changer styles that push the franchise's creative boundaries. And while we've seen our newest team's changers already and are eagerly anticipating details of their 6th Ranger, I can't wait to see how they choose to encapsulate this power and share it with us all. And that wraps up our dive into Sentai's changer styles and some of my tops. What's your favorite style of changer or your favorite changer overall? Let me know. Thanks again for watching. I'll be back with more fun Toku topics to Toku talk about. See you all next time.